Urban birds are not just used to people. Their behavior is shaped by repeated exposure to humans and their food, water, traffic, noise, buildings, and attitudes toward animals. For this project, I am looking at how birds adapt behaviorally to urban environments. I grew up in the big city of Chicago, which is home to almost as many pigeons as people. They've built a reputation as rats with wings and are seen more as pests than the intelligent and loyal animals they truly are. Here on the UO campus, you can watch our mascot waddle right past on your way to class, though they're more likely stopping by to get scraps from behind the dining hall rather than to hang out with the rest of us ducks. In all the places I've lived, I've taken notice of how the local birds adapt to living in an increasingly urban world. These birds are easy to overlook because they seem so ordinary, but they exhibit many interesting behaviors and adaptations. Urban areas are completely altered environments, creating a habitat that is far from natural. They change where food comes from, where water is available, how much noise animals hear, where they can nest, and how close they have to live to humans. Some bird species disappear from these spaces, but others can become very successful. The biologist Anders Moeller did a study on urban bird behavior and found that successful city-dwelling species tend to have traits like high dispersibility, feeding innovation, shorter flight distances around humans, and high reproductive success. That matters because it suggests that urban bird species that emerge as successful are not random. The species that do well in cities often already have behaviors or traits that make them better at surviving close to people. A few key concepts of animal behavior help give context to what is happening with city birds. Habituation happens when an animal responds less strongly after repeated exposure to something that does not harm it, like people walking near it every day. Behavioral flexibility is the ability to change behavior in response to new conditions. Feeding innovation is especially important in cities because birds may use food sources that would not exist in their natural habitats, like garbage, crumbs, or food scraps. Sexual competition is the evolutionary struggle to secure mates, often between males. The University of Oregon campus is a good example of a small urban habitat. It has lawns, paths, buildings, artificial water features, and constant human activity. The ducks living on campus are not living in a wild wetland, but they are still using the landscape in similar ways to meet some of their needs. The reflection pool at the Hawkwa Academic Center probably attracts them because it looks like a pond, even though it likely does not provide much natural food. The ducks also seem to stay near places where people feed them or where food scraps are available, like behind the dining halls. I also wonder whether these ducks move between campus and the Willamette River, since the river would provide a more natural water corridor nearby. I took pictures of the many times I encountered ducks on campus during this term. In one instance, while observing ducks on campus, I witnessed two male mallards fighting over a female. This is important because it shows that even though these ducks are living in a human-built environment, they are still performing natural behaviors connected to their reproduction. The setting changes, but the behavioral pressure is still there. Male mallards compete for access to females, and in this case the conflict happens beside campus buildings and artificial landscaping instead of in a marsh or pond. Here you can see a picture I caught of one male mallard biting the tail of the other. My friends and I stood still watching the altercation when the female duck came up behind us, using our bodies as a barrier between her and the aggravated males. In this case, she used the urban environment to her advantage, trusting that us humans pose less of a threat than others of her own species. Campus ducks can often seem unusually calm around people. One likely explanation is the process of habituation. They are exposed to students, staff, bikes, and foot traffic every day, but most of those interactions do not directly harm them. Over time, it may become less useful for them to flee every time someone walks past. Fleeing costs energy and interrupts feeding, resting, or mating behavior. If humans are not usually dangerous, staying put can be the better choice. At the same time, they may also associate people with food. That combination can make ducks and other urban birds appear very tame, even though their behavior is really a response to repeated patterns in the environment. Moeller's study helps explain why some birds thrive in cities while others do not. He found that urban bird species were often more flexible and better at dealing with novelty. They had higher dispersibility, meaning they could reach and colonize new environments. They also had higher feeding innovation, meaning they could figure out new food sources. They tended to have shorter flight distances when approached by humans, which means they tolerated human presence more than rural species. This applies well to ducks, pigeons, gulls, crows, and other birds that often seem almost too comfortable around people. Their comfort around people is not just based on personality, but rather part of a larger pattern of urban survival. One of the clearest ways humans affect birds is through food. One method of feeding innovation within urban birds is the use of humans. Many birds learn reliable areas in their urban habitat where food is often available. Many humans routinely come to feed their local birds, but this is not always harmless. When birds learn that humans equal food, they may become bolder, gather in higher numbers, or spend more time in places that are not actually the best habitat for them. It can also increase competition. If multiple birds are drawn to the same food-rich area, then aggression and mate competition may become more prevalent. Klukas and Marsleff's study on human attitudes towards urban birds explains how birds are not only responding to buildings or traffic, they are responding to human behavior itself. In their study of Seattle and Berlin, birds generally became more wary from urban to rural areas, meaning they had longer flight initiation distances outside the city. But they also found that discouraging behavior from humans, like chasing or repelling birds, could increase bird wariness in certain species. Human attitudes become part of the bird's behavioral environment. A bird that is fed every day and one that is chased away are not living in the same social world, even if they are in the same urban environment. Humans also indirectly harm urban birds through exposure to harmful chemicals, materials, or structures, as well as displacing animals by destroying habitat. Noise is another major part of urban bird life. Nemeth and Brum, in their study on birds and anthropogenic noise, explain that acoustic communication is important for birds because calls and songs are used for mating, territory defense, and warning others about predators. In cities, low-frequency traffic noise can mask those signals. Some birds respond by singing louder or at a higher pitch. Their study found that increasing pitch only slightly improved communication distance, while increasing amplitude, or singing louder, had a much stronger effect. Urban adaptation is not always simple. A bird may look adaptive, but researchers still have to test whether it actually improves survival or reproduction. One important question is whether urban bird behavior is learned during an individual bird's lifetime or whether it reflects adaptation across generations. The answer is likely both. A duck can learn that a certain campus area has food. A gull can learn that beachgoers drop snacks. But over longer time periods, birds that are naturally more flexible, less fearful, or better at using human resources may survive and reproduce more successfully in cities. Muller's work supports this larger idea because urban birds often share traits like risk-taking, innovation, and broad ecological success. The pigeon, for example, is one of the most prevalent species in urban environments, as well as a commonly studied species in behavioral testing, especially related to habituation. Pigeons' urban success proves the importance of innovation and adaptation in human environments. Because human behavior affects bird behavior, we are responsible for how we interact with urban birds. Feeding birds might feel harmless, but it can encourage dependency, crowding, aggression, and poor nutrition, while drawing them into unsafe places. A better approach is to observe them without interfering. Avoid chasing or touching them. Keep trash contained, and give them space during mating, nesting, or conflict. Urban birds are not pets, even when they seem comfortable around us. They are wild animals adjusting to a world we built around them. Doing our part to protect the environment on a large scale is also essential. Protecting natural water and river habitat, as well as improving air quality and habitat availability, help the birds we have come to love continue to thrive. My interest in bird behavior comes from observing how birds live across the globe. My dad's hometown of Corpus Christi, Texas, has been deemed the birdiest city in the U.S., with thousands of coastal birds and gulls everywhere. Growing up, I was fascinated by the countless species of birds that call Corpus home. From the little martins that steal French fries from guests at Whataburger, to the pelicans that swoop down at the docks to snatch up fishermen's morning catch, I was surprised to see how the birds seemed to run the city more than the humans did. The seagulls, in particular, seem to have little respect for human authority, and have been known to swarm beachgoers in order to steal food. It is interesting to see how humans can be so easily outnumbered, even in the urban environments we have built around ourselves. Different species in different places all respond to similar pressures: food from people, tolerance of human presence, altered landscapes, and opportunities created by cities. Many birds have learned to use public drinking fountains, like cockatoos in Australia that twist the handles with their feet and even line up for turns at the fountain. The United Kingdom had to create a new system for sealing their milk deliveries when the local crows learned to peel back the foil lids. And in Japan, crows have learned to use traffic as a tool, dropping nuts into the street to be cracked open by passing cars. In all parts of the world, urban birds find innovative ways to take advantage of their altered habitat. Urban birds are not just surviving near humans. They are a great example of how animal behavior changes under human influence. They are changing how they feed, flee, communicate, compete, and use space. Looking closely at ordinary birds makes urban ecology feel much more immediate. These animals are not separate from human spaces. They are actively interpreting and adapting to them every day. City birds have truly adapted their behavior to living in the concrete jungle. Here are my sources. My name is Marina Martinez, and thank you so much for listening to my presentation.